Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. And today in particular, I feel called to speak about the loneliness epidemic that we're currently in, particularly with Gen Z, kind of addressing the potential factors as to why Gen Z is so lonely. I am certainly not the first person to make a video about this, and I most likely will not be the last person, but I figured, especially since I am studying psychology and I'm planning on being a psychologist, I feel that this particular topic is just really interesting, and it's interesting to be a part of Gen Z and also witness all of the current dynamics at play that could potentially be contributing to our collective loneliness. Before I even get into the topics that I want to discuss, I want to say as a disclaimer that I realize that there are also economic factors that I feel are at play when it comes to the loneliness epidemic. I mean, people are working more now than ever for way less, and I feel as if that burnout is also contributing to people's lack of motivation to want to create and build long-lasting friendships. This video will more so be focused on the generational mindset that we have, this collective shift that is so different from previous generations, in how it's kind of a double-edged sword in a sense that is possibly making us very lonely. Starting with the rise of mental health awareness and acceptance. Now more than ever, people are just really open about their mental health. They're open to psychology. Going to see a therapist is encouraged more and more each day, and there's just overall less stigma around depression, anxiety, and other mental health disorders, which I think is great. I think it is a good step forward, and it's definitely an improvement from previous generations. But with that being said, I feel like our take on healing and mental health awareness has kind of started to morph into this very self-centered, self-focused way of healing. And by that I mean, as a generation, we are so focused on healing ourselves, healing generational trauma, etc. And we have taken a very individualistic approach to that healing. For example, self-care. We see all these videos, these Instagram posts about people staying at home, taking care of themselves, taking time to themselves. And while I see the necessity of taking alone time, if you do too much of it, you can end up detaching yourself from your support system. And while I think that it is good that we're all taking ownership of our healing, I also think that we are missing out on vital social connections when we think that we can heal in isolation. And on that same note, I also feel that people are going to see therapists or psychologists and using that healing relationship in replacement for all of their other friendships and relationships. We are outsourcing all of our emotional labor and emotional connectedness to our therapists. And while I think a certain amount of that is necessary in the therapeutic relationship, I think people forget that the function of therapists is to get you out of their office. Therapists are not your friend. Therapists are not there to replace your social connections. Therapists are there to help you heal so you can go out into the world and build those fulfilling relationships with other people. I think what I'm seeing is that people are making their therapists like their best friend, even though they're not. And we have started to come up with these terms such as trauma dumping and villainizing people who need to vent to their friends, even though that is a necessary component to any sort of relational building. We need each other for emotional support. You're not only supposed to get your emotional support from your therapist. Vulnerability is what strengthens and builds friendships. When you can share those not so great parts of yourself or other people, or you can lean on other people for support when you're going through a hard time. And if you think that you can only build that emotional connection with your therapist, then you are missing out on meaningful friendships. And of course, with everything that I'm going to say in this video, there is a balance to this, right? Sometimes you may not be in the space to be receptive to another person's issues or problems, and that is totally okay. Sometimes you have to sacrifice in friendships. Sometimes you have to sacrifice in relationships, in the same way that sometimes we expect our friends or our family to make sacrifices for us. It's a reciprocal relationship. I think what gets in the way of people connecting on a deeper level is just the celebration of cutoff culture and deeming people as toxic or trying to figure out people's red flags. We now more than ever show less mercy and compassion to the people around us for struggling. And of course, there is the caveat that you should never have to sit and tolerate abuse. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that relationships, friendships take work, and if there's a conflict of some sort or a disagreement of some sort, it does not always mean that you need to immediately run. Sometimes by sticking it through, talking it out, if you can work through those conflicts, that ultimately ends up strengthening your relationship in the end. We take such an individualistic approach to healing now. We're all inwards right now. We project that out into other people and we expect them to do the same thing. But when we do that, not only is it still contributing to that problem of isolating ourselves, when we are so disconnected and hush-hush about our issues, we inadvertently end up re-stigmatizing mental health and talking about mental health with each other. When we tell individuals that are struggling that they cannot reach out to their community, they cannot receive social support outside of these institutions, then we contribute to the historical marginalization of people who are suffering from mental illnesses. You may be wondering, well, okay, how do I hold space for people that may be toxic or may not be able to show up as their best selves right now? I think with each friendship, people are so complex that it does take a nuanced approach to how you deal with the toxicity in your life. I think we need to replace cutoff culture with a culture of compassion. And I'm not saying to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. What I'm saying is that we do not need to take such a black and white approach to people. We don't just need to keep people that are positive in our lives and then exclude everyone who demonstrates an ounce of negativity. Instead of cutting people off, isolating them, excluding them, I think we should set necessary boundaries for ourselves while also showing that person care and compassion. I think those things are not mutually exclusive. If we continue to cut people off that are suffering, that are going through a hard time just because they're negative, what we're telling them is you're not healthy enough to sit with us. Come back when you're fixed. And we do that to ourselves. We tell ourselves that we are not healthy enough to show up in the world, and we work on ourselves in the dark and secret, and we hide. The main idea that I'm getting at is that we cannot heal without each other. Humans need other humans. Loneliness is not a good feeling. If being lonely was good, no one would be talking about the loneliness epidemic right now. It's so evident that humans are social creatures and that having communities of support can be healing, and we isolate ourselves, we cut ourselves off from healing relational trauma. And I'm not going to try to get too technical here, but some traumas are relational traumas. They mean that they happen through interpersonal dynamics, and because of that, they can only really be healed through interpersonal dynamics, which is why the therapeutic relationship is a healing relationship. However, the therapeutic relationship is not the only relationship that can be healing in your life. And I think we prioritize our therapeutic healing relationship because it's so clean, right? That therapist is there for you. You are the center of attention. You get to express the deepest, most vulnerable parts of yourself, the ugly parts that you most likely wouldn't share with anyone else. And you are protected by confidentiality, and you know that the therapist has these professional competencies to help you. Very clean relationship, very low risk in terms of the therapist ever seeing you as too much compared to having those healing relationships with other people, because people are messy. Humans are complicated. We all come to the table with our own flaws, and in contrast to the therapeutic relationship where one person is bringing all their stuff to the table, in our day-to-day relationships, both people are bringing their stuff to the table, which makes everything way more just complex and hard. When things get tough and you immediately cut someone off, you are disregarding not only that person's capacity to grow and change, you are disregarding your own personal capacity to grow and change. So we must depolarize our thinking when it comes to labeling people as all good or all bad, in the same way that we depolarize our thinking within ourselves, that we are either all good and we can show up in the world, or that we're all bad and we must hide. We are never going to achieve this utopian, peaceful, harmonious life where everyone gets along and no one has any interpersonal struggles. Since we are human, since we're alive, since we communicate with one another, we show up in community with one another, there are going to be interpersonal conflicts. Sometimes you are going to butt heads, and that is okay, that is normal, that's natural, it's been happening since the dawn of time. I think right now with Gen Z, the prevailing belief is that we can heal in isolation. We cannot heal in isolation. We cannot go into our separate corners of the world, do all this inner work, and then come back together and expect everything to be all fine and dandy. That's not how things work. We need community. We need to be around each other. We need to be talking to each other. We need to be giving each other grace. Every time I see ghosting or cut-off culture being celebrated, my brain just hurts, because I'm like, this is why we're lonely. This is why we're in a loneliness epidemic, is because we're not showing up for one another. We're just not. While I think that we have made great strides in our conversations about mental health, I also think we seriously have so much more work to do. So next time you have a friend that is going through a hard time, be behaving in ways that you deem toxic, ask yourself, what can I do to make sure that I'm safe, yet I am still showing care and compassion for this person? What is the most compassionate thing I can do right now that doesn't require too much self-sacrifice on my end? And I think that is a much better approach than cut-off culture. That is all that I have to talk about. I realize that this is a very small piece in what is contributing to the loneliness epidemic, but I also feel like it's something that's necessary and needs to be said. I just felt like, as someone who is planning to work in the mental health field, that this is a perspective that needed to be voiced. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about potential sources of the loneliness epidemic or cut-off culture, showing compassion for toxic people. I would really like to know, like, what are we thinking? Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more videos of me talking on my floor. I will see you guys in my next video.